science is on the brink of changing your life. Right now, men and women around the world are making amazing breakthroughs.
This is incredible.
Our team of leading scientists have chosen the discoveries they think matter most.
Whoa. An almost limitless supply of clean energy.
It's these which are the basis of one of the most important of all conservation enterprises.
From the car you'll drive to medical advances that could save your life.
This miracle means that we can replace surgery.
On a journey that spans the jungles of Africa.
And I'm here to join the hunt, to find one of the biggest threats to human survival.
To the quads of Oxford.
This is arguably the most complicated thing in the universe.
We will show you how science is a force for good. Prepare to see your future.
This is the beginning of that brave new world.
Tonight, technology. The innovations that we predict will shape the rest of the 21st century. The latest use of lasers. A company colonizing space. The lab unlocking the mysteries of the universe. And the city of the future. It's technology to transform your world.
If you use a mobile phone, everywhere you go, every call you make, every text you send, and every website you look at is being recorded. My name is Kathy Sykes. I'm a scientist, and like everyone, I'm living through this technological revolution. Many of us are concerned about who has access to all this personal information, and how corporations and governments might use and abuse it. But there are some people who see this information as a resource that could help us all. They're scientists who are trying to get a better understanding of how everyone behaves. They want us to trust them with our personal information, because they believe they can use it to help us all live happier, healthier, and easier lives. I'm in Cambridge, near the city of Boston. Here, at the Media Lab at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is the man who wants us to trust him with our data.
So, this is the new part of the Media Lab? And
his name is Professor Sandy Pentland.
So, walk this way, please.
He's the father of reality mining.
Well, reality mining is using the sort of digital breadcrumbs that we leave in everyday life to understand our behavior. So as you walk around with a cell phone, you leave position markers, you call people, you use your credit card. And what we can do is we can collect those up to build sort of a psychological profile of you. Or if we do it for lots of people, we can build a profile of the community and the rhythm of the community.
To get a sense of what researchers can discover from our phones, I agreed to be a guinea pig and take part in one of Sandy's studies. Using a special app, he's been collecting my data for 10 days.
I picked out a day, it's July 9, when you were moving around and doing things. And what we see here is a graph of your physical activity around about 1300, so early afternoon. And you can see that you were moving around and so forth here, and then you stopped for a little bit, and then you did something really quite energetic, and at that time, this is what you were doing. So you were walking around, and then you went and you seem to have walked around this place here, which I don't know what it is, but we could find out if you'd like to.
Well, could we? How close is it to my house?
Well, it's quite a ways from your house, actually.
The red line represents the route I travelled that day.
Somehow you went to this...
I think I know where that is. Oh, it's my mother's.
Cool.
Yes.
Well, let's see what that all looks like there.
That's her streets.
There. That's her door, I take it, eh? There, you went in the door.
And I went in the door.
Okay.
That is amazing.
So I found out where you live,
Yep.
where you were walking around in the park, and a little bit about your habit of doing that while you were doing it. And if we looked at more of your data, we could get a sense of how sociable you're being, at what times a day, how much exercise you're getting, where you work, where your friends live.
And where I'm spending all my time. By collecting and analysing data from mobile phone users, Sandy and his team are able to predict certain elements of an individual's behaviour with up to 95% accuracy. In San Francisco, reality mining has been used to try and discover who might be at risk of an early death.
Pressure stuff. So here's people moving around in San Francisco, cell phones moving around, and the black dots are the most popular bars and restaurants and so forth. And it looks like it's a nicely mixed city, but in fact it's made up of subgroups or tribes that barely talk to each other. They spend a lot of time together, they go to the same places.
The same places all together.
And because they go to the same places, they pick up the same habits through social pressure. And as a consequence, once you've broken the city up into these groups, you find that there's lots of patterns that are shared within the groups. So for instance, there's one group there, the green guys, that has a higher risk of alcohol poisoning than the other guys. And you see one group has a high risk of diabetes, but the other ones don't.
Remarkably, the research was able to break down the participants into very specific groups. Groups that could then be targeted directly.
If you're doing a public health intervention, where would you put up free screening for diabetes? Well, you're not going to put it up in the blue areas or the red areas. You're going to go to where the people that have high risk for diabetes are. And
if you're somebody who, for instance, is struggling with an alcohol problem, you can see all these places that I hang out, that's it's being reinforced. So you could try to join a group that
that's right. You say,
does the opposite.
I probably shouldn't go to the green dot places.
Yeah.
I should go to the other places.
Reality mining gives a god's eye view of the world. There's a real possibility that it could be used to predict how epidemics may spread or how a population might react in a natural disaster. The big problem is how to convince people to hand over their personal details. Sandy believes it requires a radical rethink, that we need to treat the information like a commodity.
The question that I began to ask about 4 years ago was, is there a win-win-win solution for this? And the win-win-win solution is that you have to own the data that is about you. And so treating data, personal data, on the same sort of footing as you would treat land ownership or money ownership is really what we're talking about. And when you set up that presumption of ownership on the parts of the individual, then you get a different balance of power.
Reality mining is technology getting personal. The next move is up to us. I think many of us feel anxious about our personal data and keeping it safe. And this technology can find out things about us that are incredibly sensitive. But our data is already being stored by banks, by companies and governments. And more of it is going to be stored. So the idea of being able to choose to use the data for yourself and decide what information is kept about you, I think, is really empowering.
Technology is the engine that drives society. In our next story, it's lasers that are making the difference. Making the impossible possible.
The city of Leuven in Belgium. It's steeped in history and tradition. But I've come here to see a cutting-edge technology that could revolutionize manufacturing. My name is Max Lamb. I'm a product designer, So I'm fascinated by materials, what you can do with them, and how you can use them to make extraordinary objects. From cups and saucers and the casing of your mobile phone to complex aircraft components, designers and engineers are constantly looking for better ways to manufacture the objects that surround us. A lot of traditional manufacturing still operates on principles that have been around for ages. To make an object, you often start with a single block of material, and using machines and tools, you take away material until you have the object that you want. But you've also got a lot of waste. So what if you were to make exactly the same object, but instead of taking away material, you build it from the ground up, layer by layer, using just the material that you need? That's what's happening on the outskirts of Leuven at Materialise. The engineers here are transforming the production line with a process called additive manufacturing, also known as 3D printing. Additive manufacturing does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a way of making objects by adding material rather than subtracting it. It works on the same principle as the laser printers in an office, but instead of sending a document to print, you send an object. You start by creating a 3D design using sophisticated software. Then that's sent to these printing machines that build it layer by layer. This one is building a prototype car dashboard made from a type of liquid resin. A laser solidifies the resin to create the first layer of the dashboard. Then, the floor of the machine drops a fraction, and a mechanical arm sweeps another layer of liquid resin on top. Gradually, the whole object is built from the bottom up. The dashboard appears to grow before your eyes. To make this product in the conventional way, you'd first have to build a model, then take a mold, and finally injection mold the component in plastic. It can be expensive and very time-consuming, but with this process, you simply create a design and press print. But additive manufacturing isn't just transforming the world of prototypes and one-offs. It's now creeping into some of the world's biggest industries, making parts for some of our most sophisticated machines. This is EADS Innovation Works outside Bristol. They're working on the next generation of aircraft.
Okay, so this is the EADS Airbus A400M wing assembly plant. So this
John Mayer is research team leader.
Manufacturing. This is the sort of scale of products that we're working with.
John and his team are using additive techniques to try and make better Airbus components.
This is an example of a typical aerospace part. So this is actually a casting from an A320 aircraft. And this hinge actually holds the... you describe it as the bonnet to the engine on that aircraft. It holds that in place. And you can feel the weight of that part.
Yeah, I mean, it's heavy.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy part. Now, if we look at what we can do with additive manufacturing, we're kind of freed up a little bit in the manufacturing constraints of the technology. So we can come up with more elegant geometries that can carry the load much more efficiently.
So you can show me that here?
Yeah, so you can see this is an example of a component that's been designed to directly replace that part. So this would fit in exactly the same location.
So this does exactly the same job?
Precisely the same job.
It looks lighter, it feels lighter. The hinge is lighter because additive manufacturing lets designers create a more complex and efficient shape using the minimum amount of material required.
So you can see that that's something we're targeting with the technology, is weight saving, and that has direct implications for the aircraft, because the lighter the aircraft, the less fuel you burn, and then over the course of the life of the aircraft, you can imagine the millions of dollars potentially that can be saved by the airline industry if we're saving weight in this sort of way.
The technology is really being pushed to its limits by engineers at the University of Cranfield. This is one of the largest additive machines in the world. It's still in the early stages of development, but it could transform the way we manufacture things. It combines the traditional welding process with the principles of additive manufacturing to melt metal and build it up layer upon layer. What's so exciting is the scale. In principle, the mechanical arm could be extended to any length and move in any direction. So in this case, size really does matter. When you see a machine like this, you realize the potential of this technology and begin to appreciate how this process could make really big stuff. Stuff as big as airplane wings. This technology isn't going to take out traditional manufacturing in one fell swoop. But more and more, it will sit alongside it, and in the not too distant future, there could be additive machines on many of our factory floors. Chances are, it won't stop there. It could also arrive in our neighbourhoods. Soon, it might be possible to pop down to your local additive shop and print out a spare part for your washing machine. As a designer, what's so exciting about additive manufacturing is the way it frees up the imagination. It brings us closer to the process, and it allows us to bring to life objects that in the past we could only dream about.
Ever since I was a boy, I've dreamed of traveling into space. I've watched as technology has taken us into orbit and beyond. Now, a new breed of space explorers is leading the way. This is Los Angeles, the city of dreams. Here, in a former aircraft hangar, an extraordinary project is taking shape. The task, to do what only nation-states have ever achieved. Send rockets and people into space. This is SpaceX.
My name is Kirsten Grantham, and I am the Director of Corporate Communications at SpaceX.
Kirsten has a remarkable range of products for sale.
This is the Falcon 9 rocket with a fairing configuration. With the fairing configuration, you would be carrying a satellite to orbit. Prices start at $54 million. Over here, we have the Falcon Heavy rocket. The Falcon Heavy will be the most powerful rocket in the world. Now, that allows for you to carry very large satellites. It also allows for deep space missions that were previously impossible. The Falcon Heavy rocket sells for anywhere from $80 to $125 million. At SpaceX, we're bringing about new affordability. Now, not everybody's going to have $54 million, but if someone can show that they can afford a launch, we will sell to them. Now, there are restrictions, of course.
The commercialization of space travel comes at a critical time.
Having fired the imagination of a generation, a ship like no other, its place in history secured, the space shuttle pulls into port for the last time.
When the space shuttle was decommissioned, an era came to an end.
As we transition away from the Constellation program, we're seeking to enable completely new ways of doing business in space exploration.
One man who has taken on the challenge of private space exploration is Elon Musk. the founder and brains behind SpaceX.
It's in my soul.
Elon Musk is a billionaire. He made his fortune by inventing the internet system, PayPal. Then he used the money he made to build a rocket company.
My real interest in space started in university when I was considering what were the great problems that humanity will face, or what are the things that will most affect the future of humanity. And one of the things that I thought would have a huge impact, maybe the biggest impact, is life becoming multiplanetary.
Elon's space adventure started many years ago when he wanted to launch a probe to Mars. But the governments and companies were too expensive.
So I decided that I have to create a rocket company and try to make a big difference in rocket technology.
His first challenge was to build a rocket. The breakthrough came with the creation of the Falcon. Elon designed it himself. By refining the technology, the company was able to improve efficiency and reduce costs.
Falcon 9 rocket is quite a large rocket. It's got a thrust of about 1 million pounds of force, which is equivalent to 4 747s at full thrust, and is capable of throwing payloads as far as Mars or even Jupiter.
SpaceX became the first private company to put a spacecraft in orbit and return it intact.
T-minus 45 seconds and counting. Dragon spacecraft.
Next, it plans to deliver cargo and people to the space station. Helping lead the astronaut program is Garrett Reisman.
What I'm standing in front of right now is the original Dragon capsule that flew in space. Our intention is to fly 7 people inside the Dragon. And compared to the amount of crew habitability volume in the space shuttle, things will be a little bit tight if you look at the size of the Dragon. Think about 7 people inside. But the idea is that we'll get those 7 people up to space station and then home in a matter of days. We're not talking about weeks living inside Dragon.
Already, SpaceX has received $1 billion contract from NASA. Its ambitions don't end there.
The ultimate goal for SpaceX is to enable life to become multiplanetary by transporting maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people and millions of tons of cargo to Mars, making life multiplanetary for the first time.
I often say I hope mankind will move beyond Earth and colonize other planets. This is a step in that direction.
Since I first started making television programs nearly 60 years ago, the population of the Earth has increased by nearly 3 times. That's an astonishing and terrifying statistic. All those people need places to live and food to eat. And over half of them choose to live in cities. Science can't solve all the problems that these increased numbers mean, but it can help find ways of making those extra numbers make less demands on the Earth's resources.
Now a new metropolis is emerging with a blueprint for the future.
This is Abu Dhabi, one of the fastest growing cities on the planet. It's also one of the hottest places on Earth. It's a city that has harnessed the power of technology to defy the laws of nature. Outside, it's 45 degrees. Inside the towering hotels and shopping malls, it's chilled to perfection. And even though we're in a desert, everywhere you look, there are lush green lawns and spectacular fountains. My name is Tara Shine. I'm an environmental scientist. There may not be much fresh water here in Abu Dhabi, but one thing that is not in short supply is fossil fuels. To power the air conditioning, to sprinkle the golf courses, and to desalinate the drinking water, Abu Dhabi relies on its rich oil deposits. For some people, Abu Dhabi is their idea of a city of the future. For me, it's not. I believe the real cities of the future need to use technology in a radically different way. Just outside Abu Dhabi, they're starting to do just that. With so much wealth and available space, Abu Dhabi has begun an amazing new experiment to build a new green city from scratch. Its name is Masdar. Masdar is a risky experiment to create the most sustainable city on Earth. Currently under construction on the outskirts of Abu Dhabi, it will cost about $18 billion and eventually be home to 40,000 people. When you get to Masdar, the first thing you do is park your car here on the outskirts of the city. Then you get into one of these, a driverless electric car. It's all a bit James Bond.
Your vehicle is now ready to leave. Please be seated so that you may depart.
The cars are amongst the most advanced electric vehicles in the world. They're guided by GPS with route and speed predetermined. It's a very strange, out-of-control feeling because the car is accelerating and braking and I'm not doing anything, and I feel a little bit like I need to hold on for dear life. The city planners have ditched the traffic-clogged highways of Abu Dhabi to create a radical alternative, the ultimate in clean energy public transport. These driverless cars operate in a specially built basement underneath the city of Masdar. The advantage of that is that it leaves the ground level free for pedestrians to enjoy with no traffic. It's the kind of thing you can only do when you're building a city from scratch, right from the ground level up.
The doors are opening. Please mind the doors.
But the pod cars are just a taster. Now it's time to head up to street level, where the city really unfolds. I'm in Abu Dhabi to visit Masdar, an experimental city rising out of the desert. The idea is to create a sustainable metropolis for 40,000 people. At street level, things could not be more different from the city I just left. The architects have turned away from the Abu Dhabi model of ever taller towers and ever wider highways, and have reverted to the low-rise buildings of traditional Arab architecture. Although it's the middle of the day and we're in the desert, it's surprisingly comfortable in here. The streets are narrow and shady and has a nice breeze. It's an altogether nicer place to be than in the streets of Abu Dhabi. Masdar is not just about the latest technology. It's also about the best technology for the job. This wind tower is a perfect example. At the top is a series of louvers that open and shut depending on the direction of the wind. It catches the cool air blowing in from the desert and what you get is nature's own air conditioning. Wind towers like this used to be part of every Arab town. They brought cool winds down into the centre of marketplaces and courtyards. But now people prefer to shop in air-conditioned shopping malls, and these don't get built anymore, which is a real shame because they work and they're zero carbon. But here in the city of the future, they're not just changing how they use energy, they're changing where they get it from. Masdar is already home to the largest solar power plant in the Middle East. It covers an area the size of 35 football pitches, using 88,000 solar panels. The plant produces more energy than Masdar City needs, so the excess is sent to the Abu Dhabi national grid. But they're not settling for conventional solar power. This is the Beam Down project, the only one of its kind in the world. It's a new way of harvesting the sun's energy. The man in charge of this solar revolution is Simon Broniger. So Simon, can you explain to me what this is?
It is a tower plant, you can say.
What does that mean?
So we're concentrating sunlight, and we're concentrating it towards a tower. So you have the heliostats here. These things are mirror arrays. They turn and they focus and reflect the sunlight onto the top of the tower. So we beam up from that mirror up to these secondary mirrors, and then we beam the light down again. So the light is reflected up and then down again, and the receiver is positioned on the bottom.
By beaming the sunlight up to the mirrors on top and back down to the heat receiver on the ground, it concentrates the sun's rays like a magnifying glass. The superheated water in the receiver then drives a powerful steam turbine. And the advantage of this technology would be increased efficiency in terms of solar power.
When you're comparing it with other solar power plants, then yes, this has a higher efficiency because here we reach higher temperatures.
So this is purely experimental, it's the only one of its kind.
Yes, it is at the moment purely experimental, and we need to see whether this really works out in a large-scale installation.
What's so inspiring about Masdar City is that it's a laboratory, an attempt to apply some of the wonders of technology to an entire city, to test new ways of living that could set an example for the future. It's been great to visit the experiment that is Masdar, but it will remain just a very expensive experiment unless the technologies developed here are used in other cities around the world, like London, Lagos and Mumbai. Then we'll really be creating cities for the future.
For me, I think the greatest achievement of science is to allow humanity to realize that our world is comprehensible, that through science, through rational thinking, we can understand how the universe works.
If you don't understand how the world works, then everything is a mystery to you. And if everything is magical and mysterious, then you really don't work on logic anymore. Then everything is all about belief.
Our sanity, to some degree, depends on understanding what goes on around us, that it isn't just blind fate, that there are reasons for lots of things. Reasons is science. Understanding the reason for things is science.
For me, the technology that is most important helps us answer the big questions. How does our universe work? And how did it begin? In our next story, scientists are traveling deep into the Earth to help unravel these mysteries.
Every second, 1 trillion tiny particles pass through our bodies without leaving a trace. These minute fragments flow around and through us, close to the speed of light. They're called neutrinos, and they're believed to be fundamental to the way our universe works. I first studied physics because I was fascinated by the particles that make up our world, how they work, and where they come from. Neutrinos are produced in nuclear reactions, so they're streaming down on us from the sun, the stars, and even the Big Bang. They're coming up from the Earth from radioactivity in rocks. Every few seconds, the sun is emitting more neutrinos than there are grains of sand on the planet. Neutrinos can help us understand how the sun works and the evolution of stars, galaxies, and the universe itself. But they're so elusive, they're extremely difficult to detect. Neutrinos have been dubbed the ghost particle. But in the mining town of Sudbury in eastern Canada, a surprising experiment is trying to capture those particles. Before I get to see the experiment, I have to take a short trip in a lift. It's just 2 kilometers down. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, beneath a working nickel mine, is the Snow Lab, short for Sudbury Neutrino Observatory. It's one of the deepest labs in the world. It's home to a neutrino detector, a spectacular feat of engineering and one of the more curious experiments that physicists have attempted. Down here, the detector is sheltered from other particles produced by the sun and the stars. The observatory is this far underground for a reason. Cosmic rays interfere with the detection equipment, so they mess up the results. This is as deep into the planet as the scientists could get. The huge complex consists of corridors and caverns carved out of solid rock. It's home for some of the world's top scientists working to uncover the secrets of neutrinos. But the centerpiece of the lab is the detector itself, an enormous acrylic sphere suspended in a huge underground cavern. The neutrino detector is in a chamber directly beneath me. When it's operating, it's filled with heavy water, but right now it's undergoing maintenance work, so it's being totally drained, and that means that we can have a rare peek inside. The interior is only accessible through a small hatch at the top. To get inside, I have to be lowered down by a winch. It's a long way down, a 65-foot drop to the bottom.
One of the largest fish bowls in the world.
And we're going to be going into it.
feels amazing. It's like being suspended in a giant, glassy mirror ball. There are no edges to the walls, and the floor is curved. It feels magical. No one has ever filmed inside the neutrino detector before. So for the first time, we can show you it from the inside.
This detector is made of this giant acrylic globe that I'm standing on. Usually, there's 1,000 tons of water in here. And behind, underneath, all around this globe, are thousands of light sensors, all trying to detect neutrinos as they interact with water.
When the neutrinos interact with the water, flashes of blue light are emitted. These flashes are picked up by the incredibly sensitive light sensors and alert the scientists to the presence of neutrinos. Before this experiment, scientists had only detected 1/3 of the neutrinos they expected. SNOLAB found the missing 2/3, and that there were actually 3 different kinds. Mark Chen is one of the neutrino hunters.
The SNO experiment confirmed that our understanding of how stars work, the energy generation mechanism in stars, was correct, because neutrinos, in a sense, are like the exhaust from the engine of the star. And so by counting neutrinos, we get to see how the engine is working and what it is that it's burning. By detecting these solar neutrinos, we actually get a way to really understand the composition of our sun and what it's made up of, and it allows us to peer all the way to the solar core. So that's what makes them so exciting to detect.
Over the coming years, the scientists at SNOLAB will be running ever more sophisticated experiments to detect the most elusive particles known to exist. Nobody really knows where the research here will take us. But when scientists split the atom, nobody could predict it would lead to nuclear power, precision electronics, and the atomic bomb. But trying to unlock and understand the secrets of nature and the universe is a part of being curious and a part of being human. And we know from the past that this kind of fundamental science has the potential to change the world.
Technology touches all of our lives and changes them in ways that are hard to predict. From objects built by lasers to telephones that save our lives, cities fueled by the sun, and space rockets for hire. What we have shown you today may seem extraordinary. By tomorrow, it may be our new reality.
Next time, the environment. We join the hunt for the ultimate energy source.
This is your star chamber.
Explore the future of test tube meat.
Wow, that is incredible.
And the quest to protect our most endangered species.
A vet is now taking a blood sample.
It's science fighting to save the planet.
Go to channel4.com/bravenewworld to explore the featured scientific research and videos showing the presenters' views on where science should go in the future. Thrilling brand new drama about love, loyalty and betrayal falls in the thick of it at 10 tonight with Top Boy. Next, though, pressing the Basil Fawlty button, a power trip for consumers and a slap in the face for hospitality. Attack of the TripAdvisors on 4.